Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Atha Sashtodhyayah. In the last few shlokas of chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna gave importance to Karma Yoga. And he said almost Karma Yoga and Sannyasa are equal, and even the peak of Dhyana is equal to Sannyasa Yoga. Because in all these, one has to renounce the fruits of the action. And he also said about the Yoga Ruda, the Lakshana for the Yoga Ruda. He must be detached from all the sense objects, and he must be detached from all the fruits of the action, and in fact, action itself. He must be established in that pure self, and he must be bereft of any thoughts. And then he can be said as the Yogaruda. So that's the Bahiranga sadhana based on Karma Yoga. Now, in the next two shlokas, that is in the shloka 5 and 6 of chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna is telling about the self-effort and self-confidence. How important is this self-confidence in spirituality? In spirituality, self-confidence is very important, and the same importance should be given for self-effort or perseverance. Because when we walk on the path of spirituality, one may come across many hurdles, obstacles, sometimes disappointment, failure, some insult. So all these one has to cross over. Only then one can get benefit from the path of spirituality. Many people fearing all this, they leave spirituality halfway. So they will not be in this part and that part also. So spirituality, in that path of spirituality, one must have absolute confidence. And when I say confidence, it should not go beyond one certain level. Because confidence should not become overconfident, and at the same time, it should not become arrogance also. There is only a hairline difference between self confidence and arrogance. When we go to the level of overconfidence or arrogance, then it is another obstacle. Many people they mistake egoistic confidence as a self confidence. What generally people think as self is that ego attached with the mind, or ego attached with the intellect, or ego attached with the body. They think that as self confidence. They say that I can do everything and no one else can do it. I am experienced in it, so I can do it perfectly. Just like that, such words, they exhibit egoistic confidence. But many people think this as self confidence. Self confidence is understanding the real nature of the self as Atma and abiding by it. That is self confidence. But people mistake it for egoistic confidence. Egoistic confidence is not good for spirituality as well as for the normal life also. This is one point. The next, the other side of this is to attain this knowledge or to receive this knowledge, one has to be very humble. Only then one can attain this knowledge easily. But this humbleness goes to the extent of inferiority complex. When it goes to the level of inferiority complex, then that person feels so inferior to others, then that is also degrading the Atma. So one has to be balanced. One should first understand what is the self and be confident on it. And the next thing, one should not slip into arrogance or overconfidence, or should not slip into inferiority complex also. So this one has to take care, always check within ourselves when we want to proceed in the path of spirituality. The next point is, when we do Shravana or Manana, there will be many people to help us. There may be Guru, There may be fellow mumukshus and there may be shastras. There are many sources to help us when we do Shravana or Manana. When we have some doubt, then we can approach them or we can read the Shastras again and again, and by that way we can overcome the doubts. But when we attain knowledge and when we come to the level of nididhyasana or dhyana, then no one can help us, not even the guru or the shastras. We have to analyze within ourselves. We have sometimes when we do dhyana, we get hallucinations or we see some images. We do not know whether that is true or not, and no one else can clear it because no one else has seen it. So we have to understand that rightly with experience, and if it is hallucination, we have to come over it. So that's another point. To make both these obstacles, to overcome both these obstacles or hurdles, Bhagavan Krishna is emphasizing too much on self confidence and self effort. In the Slokas 5 and 6 of chapter 6, Bhagavan Krishna is giving so much of importance to this Bahiranga sadhana, that is having self confidence and self effort, that is perseverance. Now let us see what Bhagavan Krishna says. This is a very important shloka, and many acharyas and gurus they often quote this shloka. उद्धरेदात्मनात्मानं नात्मानमवसादयेत् आत्मैव ह्यात्मनो बन्धुरात्मैव रिपुरात्मनः. The direct meaning of this shloka is one has to uplift oneself by his own self. Let one not degrade his self or let down his self, because that self is oneself's greatest friend, and that self is his own enemy also. Very beautiful verse. What Bhagavan Krishna is telling is, the self he mean by here is, it is not the Atma, because Atma is all pervading. It doesn't need any friend or enemy, and it is all pervading, all powerful. The self, here what Bhagavan Krishna means is, that is Atma means, it is the Jivatma, the Jiva. The Jiva has to lift himself by his own self. Here the next self means the mind and the indriyas. So one has to lift his jiva by his own mind and the indriyas and the intellect. Jiva means the reflection of the Atma on the mind, the intellect, body, pranas, that combination together is called the Jiva, Jivatma. So that's why we say the Jiva has gone out of the body, the Jiva has entered the body. So Jiva is mainly the reflection of the all-pervading Atma, Brahman, on the mind, intellect, senses, and pranas. All this combination is called the Jiva. The reflection of the Atma falls on the mind. If the mind is pure, then it will reflect the same image, the same reflection. If the mind is impure, then the reflection will not be that clear or distorted. For example, we all have mirror in our house, and nowadays we have that wardrobe size mirror. But most of the houses, it will be so dusty and so much of dirt in it. We just don't bother to make it clean or keep it clean. So in that dusty mirror, if we see our image, definitely our image will not be very clear. If that mirror is not clean, or if there is some defect in that mirror, then the image we see will not be clear, or sometimes it will be distorted. If the mirror is clean, then we can see that our clear image, just like that. If the mind is pure, then the reflection of the Atma falling on the mind will be that like that itself. We can see the clear image of the Atma. But if the mind is impure, then we get only the distorted image of the Atma, or we will not get the pure image of the Atma. So this Bhagavan Krishna is telling in this shloka. When does this mind become impure? When the mind is totally diverted or directed to the external world, and this mind, it just observes what all is said or what all it sees from the external world, just like how your sponge observes all the water. And that mind, it superimposes this impure mind on the pure Atma, pure reflection of the Atma. The reflection of the Atma falling on the mind in Vedantic terms is said as Chitabhasa. So the Chitabhasa is pure divine, but the image of that Atma or the divine self is so distorted by this impure mind. When someone tell bad about this jiva, or when someone insult this jiva, someone degrade this jiva, this mind take everything just like that, keep it safe and superimpose on that image, pure image. So the jiva feels or it imagines itself to be very low. Suppose a person may say this jiva as not competent or not good or not good for anything or a fool or whatever it may be. The mind, just like it observes everything, keeps it safe in the mind and superimpose it on the divine pure image of the Atma, that is on the Chitabhasa. So the Jiva, it feels that it is so low and it can never come out of it. Already there are latent impressions in the mind due to the prarabdha karmas. Because of that also the Jiva assumes itself to be very low. Some more worse than this is when the world heard that jiva, at that time some people may not take it seriously or do not bother, but it creates deep impression in the mind and they will keep it very safe. So after some time when they are alone or when the similar situation arises, the jiva just refresh that impression and keep it on top of the mind and assume itself to be that impression and it degrades itself. So this is what Bhagavan Krishna is telling. Uddare tatmana atmanam na atmanam avasade. That is, let one not let down the jiva, because the jiva, one has to lift this jiva. The pure mind is the friend of the jiva. That's what Bhagavan Krishna is telling. Atmaiva hyatmana bandhuhu atmaiva riburatmanaha. Ribu is enemy. So the enemy of this jiva is the mind, impure mind. The pure mind is the friend of this jiva. This one has to very clearly understand. Especially some people, when they are at least young, they can take all that insult on their side. Or not only the external insult, when they go in the path of spirituality, for some people the dhyana may come instantly. For some, they may face the failure. So they feel that this path is not suitable for them and they leave halfway because their mind has said that this is not suitable for you, so leave it halfway. So that jiva will leave this path halfway. So, like this, so many discouragements they may encounter in their spiritual path, as well as when this jiva interact with the external world, they may come across so many problems and degrade themselves. Some people were even ridiculed for being in the path of spirituality. They say that, will it happen to you? Are you suitable for that? All these are so divine, so you are not fit for it. So now the jiva, they just observe like this and take it like that and they leave that path halfway. For that, Bhagavan Krishna is telling. Your mind should be pure. One, if not, one has to think over it repeatedly and make the mind pure. And only that pure mind is the friend of the jiva. The impure mind is the enemy of the jiva. That is, if the mind has some lower thoughts, then it is the enemy of the jiva. So one should not lower oneself. One has to raise or uplift oneself by his own self. The mind is the best friend of oneself, and the mind is also the enemy of oneself. We would have also noticed that some people they cannot stay alone for a long time in a single room. They need something to engage them. If they are let alone, they need at least a mobile phone or a TV, or at least they sit by the window side so they can watch the people go around. They cannot sit alone because they are not prepared to face their own mind, because their mind has so much impure impressions. They cannot face their own mind. They just go crazy when they are left alone. At least when a person is of the young age, they may have some strength to fix their mind. In the middle age, they just get anger and they are not prepared. But especially when the person is a little bit of advanced age, when they are a little bit old, then their mind make them suffer a lot. They will remember what all has they have collected it and kept it safe some 30 or 40 years back, and now they just think over it, remember it, and hurt that jiva. And according to Vedanta, just like that is degrading that divine self is the first sin. It is the greatest sin according to Vedanta, because this self is divine. It is Atma. It is all pervading. That's what Bhagavan Krishna so far he is telling. And but when at the same time, when we with that impure mind, when a person degrade that self, then that is the first sin they are committing. A person who think himself as divine will not hurt others. But a person when they imagine that ego to be their self, then they hurt others. Even though when they hurt others, we should not, when anyone hurt us, we should not take it to the heart, because this self is divine. This self is all pervading. Till we may not realize it now, but that doesn't mean this self should be degraded or thought of as not worthy. Especially when the people are old, they are so easily hurt because they feel that there is no path for them in front of them. They feel that their life is that's all. They might have worked in some place or worked in some company or for the government, and they may have retired from the service, and so they think that they are no more needed by anyone. This is the wrong thought, because even though their service may not be needed, but in reality they are the divine Atma. So one should not think all these unnecessary thoughts and to degrade oneself. When those people, when they don't see the path in front of them, what happens is immediately they go back. So they go back and collect all that unwanted things they have collected some few years back and refresh it and keep it safe in the mind again. So this should be avoided. And my guru always say that a, we give power for the external world to hurt us. The external world does not hurt us. When we do not give it value, that no one will hurt us, because the hurt and unhurt and inhibition, everything is in the mind level and it is not outside. So that's very clearly Bhagavan Krishna is telling in this shloka. Uddare tatmana atmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmana bandhuhu atmaiva ribhu atma. In the next shloka, shloka 6 also, Bhagavan Krishna is telling about this the same point. बन्धुरात्मात्मनस्तस्य येनात्मैवात्मना जितः अनात्मनस्तु शत्रुत्वे वर्तेदात्मैव शत्रुवत्. What Bhagavan Krishna is telling is, if the mind is pure and it has higher thoughts, then that pure mind is the friend of that jiva. Bandhuratma, that is the pure mind. Atmanastasya, that is for the jiva. Atmaiva atmanajitaha, that is, your pure mind can be won by the Atma, that is the Jivatma. So that Jivatma has conquered the mind and the senses. But if the mind is impure, then the Atma cannot conquer that mind, because that mind itself will lower or degrade that Jivatma. Then the Jivatma cannot conquer that mind and the intellect and the senses. And such a impure mind is the enemy of this Jiva. So one has to conquer the mind and the intellect. If the jiva has to conquer the mind and the intellect, then it must be very pure mind of higher thoughts. It must have jnana. Only then this will work. That for that only nididhyasana is very important, or dhyana is important to train the mind. The jiva is that pure self, but the mind has superimposed. The mind is superimposed on that divine self. So that divine self doesn't realize its true nature. Only the pure mind can make the jiva to realize its true nature. So Bhagavan Krishna is telling the self, that is the mind, is the friend of the jiva only when the jiva has conquered the mind and the senses. And for the unconquered self, the mind is the enemy. And the next three shlokas, that is shlokas 7, 8, and 9, Bhagavan Krishna tell about the phala, that is the result of this Atmajnana. Jitatmanah prashantasya paramatma samahitah shidoshna sukha dukkheshu tatha manapamanayoh. That is for the conquered self, that is for the jiva who has conquered the mind and the intellect and the senses. For that jivatma, it remains in peace, because in the mind, Paramatma Samahidaha. Samahidaha means clear and established. In the mind, the Brahma Swarupa is established in the mind. Just imagine how peaceful that Jiva will be. In the mind, the Brahma Swarupa is established, and for that Jiva who has conquered the mind and established the Brahma Swarupa in the mind, for that Jiva, nothing bothers him. That is, in the next line, Bhagavan Krishna says, Shidoshna. Shitala means cold, though Ushna means heat. It doesn't affect his body. That is, in the physical zone, it doesn't make any impact. Even though the heat and cold, it is of the physical level, it affects the mind only. If we go to the Himalayan ranges, there, the many yogis and jnanis, they will be meditating there, and They just take dip in the chill Ganga in the morning 4 o'clock. It is very difficult for us even to imagine. Even in the worldly life, some people they feel so cool to walk in the hot sun in the noon, 12 o'clock, but we may feel it very hot. Some may feel it very hot. So just like that, the heat and cold, it all depends on the mind. But anyway, we are experiencing it by our body. So at the physical level, whether it is heat or cold, it doesn't bother the jnani. The next is the sukha dukkha. This is at the mental zone. Pleasure and pain. We experience the pleasure and pain. But a jnani who has his mind very established in the Brahma Swarupa, he doesn't experience any pain or pleasure. And the next thing is this, the mana apamana. This is for the intellectual level. When someone hurt us intellectually, when someone hurt our knowledge, or when someone hurt our status, all these are in the mind and intellect only. When a person hurt all this, we feel that is we degrade the jiva itself. When someone tell us, for example, when someone tell us that you are a failure, then what we think is I am that failure. Actually, our actions may be failure, our result for the action may be failure, but we do not know to separate all this. We imagine that I am that failure, and that is we are degrading that divine self. So for a jnani who has the clear image of the Brahma Swarupa in his mind, all this doesn't affect him. So at the three levels, whether it is at the physical level, mental level, or in the intellectual level, the positive or negative doesn't affect that jnani. Even when someone praises that jnani, he's least bothered about it. So that is at the physical level. Now, the next shloka, that is in the shloka 8, Bhagavan Krishna is telling, going to the next level, that is the how he see the world, how he see the different objects. Let us see. Jnana Vijnana Triptatma Kuthasto Vijitendriyaha Yukta Ityuchate Yogi Samaloštashma Kanchanaha. Jnana is knowledge. That is what we collect from different sources. We read scriptures, we go to classes and attain knowledge. From different sources, we attain knowledge. But that is indirect knowledge. And in Vedantic terms, it is Paroksha Jnana. We read about it, we think about it. All these are not direct, indirect knowledge. But when we realize it, that is vijnana. Wisdom is vijnana. We have direct experience of Brahman. That is aparoksha jnana, direct realization. For example, we want to go to Himalayas and we read a lot about Himalayas. We see documentary about Himalayas, and we go and talk to the people who have gone there. So now all these are indirect knowledge only, paroksha jnana. But once when we land on that place, that is direct experience, aparoksha jnana, direct knowledge. So that is wisdom, and jnana is just plain knowledge, and vijnana is wisdom, direct realization. A yogi who has both this, jnana is absolutely needed for vijnana. Without jnana, one cannot attain vijnana, but vijnana is superior. So a jnani who has both jnana and vijnana, and who has won over his indriyas and the mind, he is like that jiva is like kutastha. Kuta means the anvil. We might have seen it in the blacksmith, with the blacksmith or goldsmith. They have a strong base, probably it will be of metal, and that is called the anvil. And the people who and the students who do mechanical engineering also, they may be familiar with it. So that could is that strong structure, a metal structure, and the goldsmith or the blacksmith, they heat small piece of metal in the furnace, With the tongs, they take it and place it on the anvil and hammer it so that that small piece of iron or gold they can be changed into the shape they want. So, whatever way strong one may hammer on the anvil will not change. That is Kutastha. And this word Kutastha is widely used by Swami Vidhyaranya in his Panchadasi. He says Brahman as Kutastha. Panchadasi is a very important Prakarana Grantha of Vedanta. It's very important text. So that is Kutastha. So here Bhagavan Krishna is telling that Jiva who has established his mind in this self, who has jnana and vijnana, who has won over the indriyas and the mind, he is Kutastha. And because he is of that strong nature, for him, everything is same. All the objects are same. What are all objects? Bhagavan Krishna is telling Loshta. Loshta means it is a clay, some clay with which we make pot, or you can say it as sand also. Clay, Ashma, stone, and Kanchana, gold. For him, everything is same. That is, he doesn't give value or attach value for all the objects. And there is also a very famous story connected with Lord Buddha. Once, when Lord Buddha was walking along the road along with his sishyas, many people, the common public, they insulted him and they said some bad words about him, and they just scolded him, slandered him, and disturbed him in all the ways by words. So the Sishyas, one of the Sishyas, he asked him, "What is this, Guruji? You're so calm and they are hurting you in different ways." And Lord Buddha said, "They are speaking their mind. If I do not accept it, then those words may either return back to them or they go waste. Anyway, I'm not accepting it." So that is the mind like Kutastha. Because once when we realize the self, once when we realize our real nature, then that image will be so strongly established in the mind and nothing will can disturb a person. So that Bhagavan Krishna is telling in this shloka. In the next shloka, Bhagavan Krishna is telling that how such a jnani will react to his relatives or the people around him. Suhrun mitrayudasena madhyastadvesha bandushu sadurshvabecha papeshu samabhuddhir vishishyate. That is for such a jnani, suhrun, that is people who are good-hearted, dayalu, kripalu, that like that person, good-hearted people. Mitra, friend. Udhasina, a person who doesn't care about this jnani, slander this yogi or a jnani, tell bad words about this jnani. Udhasina, they disrespect this jnani. Madhyastha, that is, doesn't have neutral about this jnani. Udhasina, Madhyastha is neutral about this jnani. He doesn't feel good about him or bad about him. Dvesha, haters of this jnani. Bandhushu. Bandhu means two meaning. It has one is the relatives and other is the friend, whatever it is. Sadhu is similar sannyasi like him, or a person who is always do righteous act. And papi, that is a person who always does do forbidden acts or who do unrighteous act, or crime, or criminals like that. For a jnani, all of them are same because they are all divine atma attached with the impure mind, or the jivas who has not conquered their mind. That's all. Yes, sadhu has conquered his mind. He is a divine atma, divine self, but has conquered his mind. And a papi or a criminal is a person who has not conquered his mind. That's all. That's the difference. But he treats all of them equally. For him, he sees only the divine Atma in all of them, not the mind. So that is the great soul. That's why even in the ordinary world, some ashramas or organizations they go to prisons and rehabilitate the prisoners there. That's a very nice thing to do, but they must have very strong mind, well established in jnana, or otherwise sometimes they may behave with them wrongly, or if that situation is not right, then they must know to tackle that situation. So these are all how a jnani or a yogi treat the other being. So with this, I take a break and continue with the rest of the shlokas of chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita in my next video. यत्र योगेश्वरः कृष्णः यत्र पार्थो धनुर्धरः तत्र श्रीर्विजयो भूति ध्रुवानीतिर्मतिर्मम ॐ श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु